'cause I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere, man. Across the deserts bare, man. I've breathed the mountain air, man. Of travel I've had my share, man. I've been everywhere. Been to Tullamore, Seymour, Lismore, Mooloolaba, Nambour, Roochdore, Kilmore, Marillaba, Birdsville, Emmaville, Wallaville, Connemara, Connemara, Strathrown, Proserpine, Alladala, Darwin, Gingin, Lilliquin, Muckdilla, Wallumbilla, Bougainville, Cumberland, I'm a killer. I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere, man. Across the deserts bare, man. I've breathed the mountain.
We are back, 94.7 The Pulse Regional Roundup, a shortened one because we had to fit Mike Rudd in. Don't forget tomorrow at Queenscliff, 1 till 4. Tickets, go onto the Queenscliff Golf Club Facebook page and you can get a ticket to go and see the great man in action. We've had two Australian music icons in their 70s, still working, still having fun. That is great news. There's another man, he's not quite as old as them, but he's still working and he's still having fun. Regional Roundup is taking us to Cannawigara in South Australia, and good morning to Michael Hunt.
Good morning, Rob.
Good to hear your voice again. Just to get a bit of clarity, my community radio journey started way back in 2012, and early in 2013 I met this gentleman, and we became, well, we were the two blokes chatting of South Australian radio for some period of time there, Mick, weren't we?
Certainly were. It was called the Sporting Grill, and there was a lot of verbal diarrhea, lots of fun, lots of information.
We do a regional roundup with an idea of what's happening in other places, and there was some news come out recently about the Australian agricultural world. 90 billion that is, dollars worth of trade income through pure agriculture in Australia. You produced a little pocket of that over there, and the whole community where you live is totally reliant on the agricultural world. It's changed a lot in your lifetime, but at the moment, is it probably at its most vibrant?
It is. I think we're probably on the cusp of having a couple of tougher years with the input prices rising, but the last 6 years, it's been amazing. And 6 years ago, National Farmers Federation said, their goal is that Australian agriculture will produce $100 billion GDP by 2030. We're at 90 now. That's just amazing because it was at about 30 6 years ago.
Yeah. So the people that were talking knew what they were talking about.
Yeah.
The style of agriculture, I guess, has changed a little. It was a lot more grazing, animal-oriented when we were probably kids. Now it seems to be a lot more growing wheat, oats, barley, canola, beans, protein, legumes across that neck of the woods. Have you found it easy to move with the requirements as markets have changed?
Yeah, certainly. It's easier to move to where the money is, I guess. People tend to do that. It's certainly changed. There's a lot more prescription. People aren't just carte blanche throwing fertiliser everywhere. People concerned about nitrates in the soil and that. No one's throwing more out than they need, so don't panic, anyone. But also, there's a lot of dual-purpose stuff. There's cover cropping happening, and there's a lot more focus on soil health than perhaps there ever has been. And it's a pretty exciting time. We had a pilot working for us a couple of years ago during COVID, and he grew up on a farm, and he said if it was like it is now, he would have never left. He said it's so much more interesting and exciting than what it ever has been. So.
And that's a very good point, because one of the things that's changed in conversation and in practice is looking after the environment, and it's a lot more than just the stuff that happens on news stories, but farmers really need to be aware of the environment and look after it, because it's financial disaster if they don't.
Yeah, and farmers are spending serious dollars on learning as much as they can, improving and changing their practices. It's you see some people pouring the money into their farm just to make it as good as possible, and really we've seen some phenomenal growth in output without and it seems to be sustainable. It's you see the countryside, it looks beautiful and healthy.
Yeah, well, it does, and a couple of things in particular that are talked about negatively a lot, and that is growing trees and care for animals. That's something that has become more prominent in a farmer's everyday life as well.
Yeah, it certainly has, and also keeping residues and not smashing soil around like used to happen when I first left school. We'd go and work the soil up, and then when we had nothing to do, we'd work it back again, and then and smash it around till it was a beautiful fine powder and ran water off, and Our local creek doesn't run as much now because all the water stays on the slopes where it's meant to. So.
Yeah. The other important part, agriculture to communities, is that word community, bringing you together, keeping the community vibrant, and for reasons you just said before, making it interesting for young people to want to stay in their community rather than head off to capital cities, which was a major issue a few years ago.
Yeah, it certainly is, and we've got a local wheat crop competition. I was involved with that, and I was the last surviving member. All the previous organiser was he passed on, and the one before that was 103, and I've just handed over to, there's a group of 8, and the oldest one's about 28, and the rest are all in their early 20s, and they're doing a fantastic job running that.
Good news.
And there's lots of good young people getting involved, and it's making the community so much more vibrant.
Now, you sent me a little text about an interesting comment, and we're going to go to the other major part of rural communities, and that is sport. It's always been a big part, and now that women are playing footy and cricket, it's become a lot more user-friendly, if you like, and a lot more people involved all of the time. And a great little story from your last outing as a coach of a women's football team.
Yeah, we come up against a side, Cannawigara, who have been good, but unfortunately in women's football in regional areas, every year there's a couple of sides that have got a whole heap of new players and not much experience. And our local team, Mandala, we've got probably 2/3 of our side have played 30 or 40 games now, so there's quite a bit of difference between them and a team that's with a 9-10 game season have only played 5 or 6 games each player. So their coach said, you're going to belt us tonight. We're really lacking in experience. And so we had a bit of a chat before the game. And you never go into a game thinking you're going to belt a side. You think, let's make sure we're competitive, make sure that by quarter time we're in the game, that sort of stuff. Well, as it turned out, we were 13 goals to zip at half time. And so we said, right, Cannawigara can have our goals and we'll start at zip. And the competition was they had to defend that total. We had to try and run it down. And so instead of being just a boring 24 to zip game or whatever it was, because of Play HQ and all that, we had to report it as it happened. But on the scoreboard at the ground, everyone was interested, and the Cannawigara girls held us off by 4 points. So it was a really nice way. The Cannawigara girls really enjoyed the game.
And for those Victorians listening, zip is a South Australian word that means zero.
Or bugger all, or...
Yeah, not much. Very little.
So it ended up quite competitive. They really tried hard to defend it, and it was a good game in the end.
So tell me, with this new increase in women's sports and these communities now getting involved and engaging this, are we seeing a similar effect into the agricultural side of things with women in agriculture?
Yeah, certainly. I was involved with grain growers in Sydney. Their headquarters is in Sydney. And, the CEO, when I first went there, was a lady. My boss that organised the policy group was a lady, and in our policy group had 15 farmers, of which there was only 2 or 3 females, but there's actually now 4 or 5. That's happening more and more. But as far as the professionals in grain growers, there would be probably 60% at the moment in grain growers at the moment that are females, and they are amazingly good at what they do, advocacy. I'm just blown away by how they can outthink or think ahead in a negotiation and that. And so that's happening. My daughter-in-law works on the farm. There's my wife and my son and daughter-in-law and we work on the farm together. Stock agents talk to Sammy as much as they do, and I say, talk to them. Josh and Sammy run the livestock, and they and this is happening right across the board. Our neighbours, him and his wife, they run the farm, and they both take equal parts in the job, and it's happening more and more, and it's really good.
Excellent, Michael. Thank you very much. I'm sorry we had a shorter chat than planned, but already the listeners know that it was full of vital information, interesting stories. That's what we try to do on Regional Roundup, find out what's happening on the other side of the fence. Good luck to you and your Tigers for Thursday night. You get the privileged position of kicking the season off again. In a word, optimistic for the year?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't be surprised if Richmond lose a few games they shouldn't early in the season, but I think they'll settle down to be a pretty competitive side by the end of the season.
Good on you, mate. Best wishes. We will talk to you hopefully in the flesh soon when I cross the border next. Look after yourself till then.